Hello, hello. I don't know about you, but I am obsessed with the show Tell Me Lies, and season 2 just came out. I just kind of want to discuss everything, debrief everything. So that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to try and do this like a podcast episode for each episode that comes out. So I hope you enjoy and stay tuned. We get a nice little recap in the beginning of this first episode, which is super helpful because so much happened in the last season, even the last 10 minutes of the final episode. And then we just get right into it. We hear a bit of Bree's voice, and then we show up at the engagement party, so in 2015, in our future timeline. Then we see Lucy, and she is very clearly upset, going through something, and we get another flash of Stephen and Lydia. Ugh! Seeing Stephen for the first time again this season, it's like, really? He's still here? And Lucy, she was becoming unlikable a lot last season, but I feel like so far after watching the first 2 episodes, the general consensus of the audience is we're rooting for her in a way. We want to see her succeed and at least get some kind of redemption from last season. Now, knowing what we know from the finale of season 1 with Lucy and Evan, it's very interesting to watch these engagement clips and see this future timeline, because we as the audience have no idea what people have figured out, what people know at this point in time. You know, Bree says that Pippa and Lucy are her best friends, so I'm not sure, and I'm going to be really interested to see how that all unfolds this season. We see Lucy trying to smile, trying to put on this front, which I think is a big theme of this episode and this season so far. But we keep flashing to Stephen and Lydia being all cute and cuddly in the corner. And it is nauseating to see. Because even Lydia, there's so much we don't understand about what happened with her and her story. Then we get some time with the girlies. I love this friendship, this trio. But there's kind of some tension in this scene. They're all asking about each other and what's going on in their lives. They're asking about Lucy and Max. And then for Pippa, they're asking about who she's seeing, which we'll talk about later. Oh my gosh. And then we see the boys, and I love Wrigley and Evan too, and they're all joking that they're gonna cut Steven's hair and give him like a buzz cut. And I saw people saying online that this was one of Steven's ways to just trigger Lucy even more, to remind her of that time in her life in college when they were together and everything that happened, because that's one of the most distinct changes about him when we see him in the 2015 timeline, is his hair is fully grown out. And then Lucy immediately leaves, so I guess it works. And then we get the first bombshell of this season. This is huge. We're like 5 minutes in. Lucy goes into a room. She's having this emotional moment to herself. Lydia comes out of, I guess, the bathroom in that room. And they try to have some small talk. We don't really know what the status of their friendship is anymore, because obviously since she's engaged to Steven, something's happened. And we get this little chat. You're kind of figuring it out. And then Lydia drops this bombshell, this absolute bomb where she says, "Oh, Stephen wants me to act nice today, and I'm trying my best." And her tone completely changes. And she just says, "I will never forgive you for any of it." What? Oh my gosh. Watching this, I could not believe what I was hearing. And we have no idea at this point what any of that could mean, what's happened between 2008 and 2015. So that was really quite a way to kick off this first episode. Some more fun music moments. Holla Back Girl then starts playing, and we get this transition into Lucy running, which seems to be, again, a kind of theme throughout the season so far. You can tell she's getting her anger out. She's trying these different coping mechanisms to get over everything that happened freshman year. But we get this great scene where she's just on the treadmill, so angry, with Holla Back Girl playing. Very iconic. And then she comes out with Lydia. They're staying, I guess, in the Hamptons, they were saying, this summer. And they're just chatting. I mean, this is so, it's funny how much of a difference there is between this timeline and 2015. Her and Lydia are talking about how awful Stephen is and how she wants to move on. And Lydia's agreeing to everything. And then we see what happens in 2015. Lydia calls Stephen a little gremlin, and she offers so much support to Lucy, and Lucy makes it clear that Lydia's been so helpful to her this summer. I mean, you can tell with her strutting out, she's really been working on regaining her confidence after freshman year. And we get the first time when Lucy says, "Diana did me a favor," which is funny later on because if you've watched it, you know she says it twice later on again. So you can tell she's just, it's so like classic and relatable. She's just been thinking about this all summer and has all these things she's been saying to herself. Then we have a new character alert, Lydia's brother, who is enrolled and is going to be a freshman at Baird this upcoming year. First of all, I thought this was great casting. I think Chris and Lydia look so much alike, those two actors. What's interesting in this scene is they make a point of Lydia saying, oh, I can't believe you chose Baird over Colgate. And Chris has a comment, oh, the girls are hotter at Baird. And I just think it's very interesting that they've chosen to present, you know, his first few lines when we first meet him as a character in this way. Like, this is something that he says right off the bat when we're just meeting him. Lucy gets a text from Bree, a photo of her and Evan, and this really just serves as a way to show that she's still very clearly feeling guilty over what happened in the year prior, and that's going to be a challenge that comes up throughout these next episodes. Next, we get a scene, finally, of Steven and Diana in the present timeline. They're having lunch with Diana's dad. This is, again, from last season's plot of him wanting to go to law school. He was able to get a law internship that summer through Diana. And we have this really interesting scene where they're talking about everything that happened over the summer. I mean, the dad says, and I was shocked too, that he did a good job this summer. But the kicker is then that Diana gets up to leave and the dad starts talking to Steven one-on-one. Oh my gosh, Diana's dad reads him down. He essentially says, like, I saw how you act this summer and you are manipulative and you use that to get what you want. You use that against people. And he says, you know, I don't want my daughter around anyone who's trouble. And this is just such an interesting scene to me because at college he's in such an insular group of people. So they know what kind of guy he is. But even just from this summer with Diana's dad, he could read him just like that. The other funny thing that comes up in this scene is we see Steven has an iPhone. He gets an iPhone, which is a bit of, 2000s kind of humor going back to that time since these were not common at all. And so that just becomes kind of like a funny thing for Steven, at least in this first episode, because he doesn't really have it working for long. Then we get Lucy moving into her dorm, and it's such a fun scene. She looks gorgeous as ever, and we finally get the trio reunited after their freshman year going into sophomore year. Bree comes in, and oh, it really hurts my heart because I love Bree so much, and she is so sweet. But you can just tell Lucy, she's trying her best to act normal, but this secret is just bubbling up. Then Pippa comes in, and she says, my poussoirs, and it's just like, they have the best dynamic, these three. I heard in an interview them say that they hang out outside of the show, and you can really see that coming through. Like, the giggling they have, the way it's so authentic when they're talking, is so fun and delightful to watch. And for Pippa, we see that she has a hair change. She bleached her hair, which was, I wonder if it's like to do with a timeline, if there's any kind of plot device going on with that, or just honestly a realistic thing where sometimes people go through it, especially after freshman year, and then sophomore year they have a change, like a hair change. We get Wrigley and Steven. They're living together now that Evan decided not to live with Steven. Good call, Evan. And Wrigley is so silly and adorable as ever. We do learn that he still has an injury and he's still kind of dealing with the repercussions of that. Evan does come in and greets them, gives a big hug to Wrigley. Steven hugs him and says, I missed you. And Evan's like, he takes a beat and then he's like, yeah, you too. Oh my goodness. Evan he knows what kind of guy Steven is. So that's what shocks me when he keeps talking to him throughout these 2 episodes. Steven comes in and tells Evan, it's better if you don't ask about that Drew stuff. Which, of course, this is something that he's not saying in a selfless way. Of course, Steven would want everyone to forget about what happened last year because that benefits him. He even says to Evan, last year was crazy. Like, it's probably better if we just forget about it. Of course you think that, Steven. Back to the girls. They're all getting ready to go out that night. And we learn, one, that Lucy is going to be back in Marian's class. This is the English teacher she had from last term, who she kind of had a lot of different trials and tribulations with. And Bree is so kind and offers to take the class with Lucy so she feels less uncomfortable. And then we hear a little bit about Bree's concerns with Evan and how he's been acting weird all summer. And we know why. We get a great line from Pippa here about Steven disrespecting Lucy in a coconut bra and how it is unparalleled. And I was like, so true. And Lucy is doing her makeup while talking about all this. And we get this really funny moment where she says, honestly, Diana did me a favor, keeps talking. And then again goes, honestly, Diana did me a favor. And Bree and Pippa are like, are you okay? Like, you just said that twice. And it is just, the acting from Grace Van Patten so far is so natural. Like, the way that she's playing this, you can just tell Lucy is on a bit of a downward spiral that she is going through right now, and she's trying so hard to fight her feelings, but she's struggling to do so. And she even says being away from him, it's like the hypnosis wore off. And I think that's just foreshadowing how everything's going to go for this season, because when she was away from him, he wasn't in front of her. She was able to focus on so many other things. It's like in the very first episode of season 1 where she says, when I'm not with him, I don't even think he's that attractive. But there's something about, like, when I was with him, in front of him. And it's that way he's able to manipulate people. Again, yeah, I think that's just foreshadowing how as soon as she sees him again, all these feelings are going to come back. And we get this really funny moment, too, where she's doing her makeup and she says she's all ready and she's only done one eye. And, oh my gosh, it's like, it's funny because she's laughing about it, but you can also tell she's just such a mess right now. She is such a mess. It's sad to see, but it's funny. It's just like this really interesting moment. We get a bit of her hopeful goals for this year. She says, I don't even want to focus on guys. I would just want to focus on school. So relatable, that is not what ends up happening. The girls are then at this party, and you can feel that very college-y tension of who's here, who am I going to run into tonight that I don't want to see. Chris comes by, says hi to Lucy. Lucy introduces him to her friends. And you can tell immediately that there's some kind of chemistry or something going to happen with Chris and Pippa. Evan comes over, and then we get another new character introduction. Leo, he's a guy that's in that same frat, and he was apparently away all of last year studying abroad in Paris. Evan takes Bree aside. Lucy and Pippa walk around, and then they see Wrigley with another girl from across the room. Very upsetting. Lucy immediately takes her to the side, tries and get her to not look, and Pippa goes off and starts talking to Chris. We also see Diana and Steven entering the party, and I don't know why it's so funny the way, like, Diana is so happy. She has the biggest smile on her face, and Steven's holding her up there with his little, like, hunched over posture, just looking like Steven, and it's like, she's so happy to be with him at this party, which is funny, and it's sad. I really want more for Diana. Lucy then bumps into Leo, the new guy, and there's immediate chemistry and banter. Lucy is so funny the way she's so natural, like I was saying. She's just talking and laughing and making all these little jokes. They kind of talk over each other at a few points, which you never see in TV shows, but that's what happens in real life, So it just felt very natural, which I liked. And they make some jokes about France, and this line would be funny. Leo says, "Oh, the French hate me, I talk too loudly." It's kind of that typical, like, loud American stereotype. But the only thing about this that didn't really hit for me, like, the joke didn't land, he doesn't really talk that loudly. He kind of talks in a soft tone. So that would have been funny. But it's just a part of all the, like, flirtatious chat that they're having. Then Lucy and Evan have this little chat where they essentially say that they're not going to tell Bree. And it is just heartbreaking. It is just so upsetting because Bree is the most precious, wholesome, best character on the show. So for her to think of, like, her heart being broken and her having to be, the consequence of their bad actions is so tough to watch and tough to think about. Oh my gosh. And then it only gets worse. This is, like, again, this is so, like, relatable to what would happen at a college party. She walks away, she's walking through, you can tell she's kind of distraught. And of course she walks into a room, and who is in that room but Steven Demarco? We really learn here that Steven is just as insane and sociopathic and awful as he has always been. They have some small talk, and it's pretty clear, at least, even if she's putting on a front, it looks pretty clear that Lucy is okay. She's not super upset. And you can just tell that that is so frustrating for Steven, which makes him, he's so messed up. Like, he wants Lucy to be upset about everything that happened because he kind of, I think it's that fine line between love and hate. Like, he wants her to feel something for him, even if it's hate. He drops Diana's name, he mentions the law firm, and eventually he says to Lucy, you know, you're doing a really good job at pretending not to be mad at me. And she is so confident with it. She is giving the best responses. She's like, I'm fine. Steven is scratching his head like he can not truly understand how Lucy could not be mad. You can just see the gears working in his head, like that he is upset that she is fine, which is so messed up of him. And he makes the first snarky comment when he says, like, you know, good for you. You've got other things to worry about now. So rude. You know, like, you can tell he's upset because there's no reason why he would have to make such a comment like that. Oh my gosh. And Lucy just has the best response. She is doing so well with at least the front she's putting on. And she says, well, you know, everyone makes mistakes freshman year. Oh my gosh. Such a good moment. And she says, good to see you, and walks away. And Steven, again, like the sociopathic little man he is, calls her back and says, I don't buy it. And he's got those eyes. He's looking so deeply into her eyes and says, I bet you've been thinking about me. And you can just tell, like, he's trying to work that manipulative magic and charm that he's used and used successfully before. And Lucy is just able to read him so well and says, it doesn't work anymore, Steven, and walks off. Oh my gosh, mic drop moment. It is so good. But she's not okay. She is not okay on the inside, and she goes off and cries. But what a good scene, because you just learn so much about where they are at now and what's changed and what hasn't in their characters and their relationship dynamic. Cut to the next scene, and we have another new character, the professor. Now, I'm not super into this storyline so far. I know a lot of people online have been. Maybe it's because I love Brie and I don't want them to butcher her character and I don't want to see her do bad things. But here we see one of this teacher, Oliver's students, come up and kind of do like a, not sob story, but say like, oh, I had a really hard time last semester. I guess trying to get a better grade. And Brie is trying to sign up for this English class with Lucy, but they say it's full. And she, seeing this happen, does a similar thing where she starts to kind of do a little sob story and say like, oh, I have to get in, I'm such a failure. And it works, but then this professor, you know, notices it. So he remembers her later on. Cut to the dining hall. We have Evan and Brie. They're clearly still having issues. Steven shows up. Brie gives him the complete cold shoulder, which was also fun to see. And Steven's all like, why? What's with the attitude? And Evan says like, of course they don't like you. But Steven, again, being manipulative, I don't think he meant this originally. Then he says, not with me, with you. After a bit of chatting, Steven has this moment where he realizes and he goes, oh my God, you cheated. To which Evan, you know, lies at first and he says like, no, that's crazy. But this moment was it's so interesting because Steven is smart in the worst way. He knows what makes people tick and he knows how to read people, and that's what makes him so good at what he does. But this was just crazy to see it play out. And Steven's trying to help him out and be like, oh, don't worry, this happens. And Evan's like, no, it doesn't, not to me. And I mean, it's just so crazy how nonchalant Steven is about the whole thing. You get all of Steven's moral philosophizing here where he says, just because you did one bad thing doesn't make you a bad guy. And you just get the sense that these are the kind of things he probably tells himself so that he can sleep at night. And the frustrating thing here is like, Evan knows that Steven is not a good guy. So why is he taking any advice from him? I mean, I guess he's kind of desperate for it because of how guilty he feels and hopeless he feels. But Steven is just the last person you'd want to get any advice from, especially since, you know, Brie just cursed him out. Of course, Steven's going to want to use this information in some way later on. Next, we're at Marianne, the English teacher's house, for this poetry reading. And Lucy and the professor have this kind of touching moment, and I think their relationship is going to be very interesting throughout this season. Lucy apologizes for everything that happened the year before, explains that she was in a bit of a weird headspace, and Marianne's very comforting. So that was nice to see. And guess who Lucy sees next? The girl who is literally everywhere, Diana. They have a little bit of a chit chat. Diana just gets snarky, like pretty quickly. She says like, oh, you don't even know why we're here. We're here for this poet, like the specific poet who I love. Lucy walks away and Diana says, that's nice. And Lucy's like, do I owe you niceness? Which is honestly pretty valid. And I feel like Lucy has been handling these things pretty maturely. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this interaction. Diana says, you have to know that you two aren't right for each other. And Lucy hits her with the, I know about a lot of things, which Diana later questions Stephen about. At the same party, Bree has stepped outside, and guess who's outside? The Professor Oliver. Like I was saying, I'm really not that interested in this plot. I mean, let me know if you want to discuss it more, maybe in the next episode. I guess the one interesting thing from this interaction is when they discuss how Bree acted at the registrar when she started kind of crying. And he's calling her out on her bluff, like, oh, you were not that emotional, like you were putting up an act. And Bree says some men respond better to little girls. And the professor laughs and he says, like that's probably true. That is going to be such an important moment for later in the season. I think it's going to tell a lot about what happens with this relationship. Another interesting scene comes up next in Lucy's English class. The teacher says, we all wrote about loss this week. Who wants to share? This girl starts to share. And it's the story. It's kind of abstract at first. It's this story about a man, it seems like, leaving a girl. And Lucy, we see her face and she's immediately starting, her mind is working and she's thinking something about this. Then the girl starts to reveal what the metaphor actually is. Or it's not really even a metaphor. It's about a bird. The whole story is just about, like, I guess her pet bird. And Lucy starts to laugh. And then that slowly turns into kind of a cry, and she runs out of the classroom. I think this is so interesting for her character as a scene because I guess the way I've interpreted it currently is that it was touching a soft point for her. It's kind of struck a chord with her because she was thinking about Stephen and all of last year. And then as soon as it was revealed to be about a bird, she just kind of couldn't believe that she felt so emotional about it. So she starts laughing. And then it's almost like it's humorous, but then it gets sad that she was getting emotional about it in the first place. And, Bria talks with her about it afterwards. But that is a scene that I kind of can't stop thinking about, honestly. Lucy goes back later to talk to Marianne because you can tell she's just so embarrassed by how she acted. And we get, I think, another really kind of sweet scene. Lucy is just apologizing for everything and Marianne pulls her in for this really tender hug and tells her it's okay. You can tell she's just such a great teacher. Like, she really cares about Lucy. There's this really funny moment where she says, it kind of can't get any weirder. Like, you can be open with me. We had that whole talk with your mom last year about, you remember what happened with the short story. And that was kind of another sweet moment where Lucy laughs. Lucy is just so vulnerable in this moment. She says that she wants to make up for her performance last year, and Marianne offers her to help with her own special project as some extra credit. So I think we're definitely going to see a lot more of this duo and their dynamic this season. And Marianne gives her some interesting advice about not always taking the high road if something is eating you up inside. And I think that definitely spurs Lucy to later on act out a bit. The girls are in the dining hall and they decide to go over and sit with Leo. And they're just so funny and giggly, and the chemistry with, like, all of them is just so there. It's so fun to watch. There's this funny moment where Lucy says, like, oh, no, we're good. Like, I just had a psychotic break. And Leo says, in the first week, and she's like, yeah, I move quick. It's just perfect. But, of course, who sees them from across the dining hall and doesn't like that Lucy's clearly having an okay time? Stephen. This man comes over and does the most diabolical thing. He sits down, he greets Leo, and then he goes into this apology to Lucy about everything that happened, which you just know isn't authentic. He's doing this in front of everyone for a very specific reason. It is so painful to watch. Because, he starts off like, Oh, I'm so sorry for last year when I kept embarrassing you and you kept forgiving me over and over and over again. He apologizes for probably eroding any sense of dignity she had and claims that the whole time he knew he was in love with Diana. And Jackson White's acting here is incredible. Just the way he delivers these lines and he's looking around at everyone at the table. He's got this very slight smirk where, like, you can just tell he's enjoying every moment of this. Diabolical is the best word I can think of to describe it. We immediately cut to another scene of Lucy doing her angry running on the treadmill. And you can feel that anger through the screen. And this leads us right into yet another iconic badass Lucy moment. She storms up to Steven's dorm, knocks on the door. Of course, Steven is holding his little iPhone. And she just takes it and smashes it on the ground. And she's like, yeah, I am mad at you. But, I'm going to destroy your life if you keep this up. For the end of the episode, we come back to the 2015 timeline, and we start to hear this cover of Crazy playing, which first of all, Crazy is like such a good song they could have picked for the show to be kind of a running theme. But if you didn't know, the person singing the cover is Kat Missel, who plays Bree, which is amazing. We see Lucy walk back into that living room area, and there they are buzzing Steven's hair, and you could just tell she is fed up at this moment, and she immediately wants to leave. Both girls leave, and we do see this moment where Bree goes back. She's sitting with the three guys, and she looks a little bit upset. She looks a little bit hesitant, and we just have to wonder, what does she know at this point in time? Oh my goodness. And of course, in true Tell Me Lies fashion, in the last minute of this episode, we get the big reveal of who Pippa has been seeing. Diana. They smooch, and you know what they say? They say, was he there? Yep. And then she says, both of them were there. We don't fully know who both of them are. We know one is Steven. I'm wondering at this point, if you've watched episode 2, if it's Lydia. This whole scene, this plot twist, this reveal, at first when I watched it, I really just felt like this is pure shock value. Like, how does this end up happening? Really, how does this end up happening? I was thinking about anyone else for Pippa. But I think having seen the second episode as well, I am interested in how this will play out and how they're going to end up finding each other and getting together. But that was like the craziest reveal of all. I know people online were freaking out about that one, and I was too. That is all for episode 1. Let me know what all your thoughts are in the comments below. I really want to discuss. Let me know your theories, if you have any ideas of what's going to happen next. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.